Let's look at this poem a little more closely now. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. That's true, isn't it? The world changes. We find ourselves in a new place without that pivotal person. A friend of mine who lost his mother once said, "It's as if the sun and the moon are no longer the same. The ground beneath you gets fragile." Why fragile? Perhaps because we are rediscovering this world and this place and ourselves. You may feel as if you can't trust your senses, or your voice, or your words. Perhaps you are afraid of breaking down. Maybe you are afraid that if you cry, you will never be able to stop. But you will. Maybe you are afraid that if you cry or break down, others will think you are weak. But you are not. You may feel vulnerable, unsafe, exposed, and alone. It's important to recognize how fragile and vulnerable you really are after such a significant loss. And it's okay. It's important to be patient with yourself. It's important to be kind to yourself. And it's important to be gentle with yourself. The poet goes on to write, "Your heart has grown heavy with loss." Heavy. That is a key word here. Who have you lost? A parent, a child, a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a cousin. But the loss is more than who that person was, isn't it? You've not only lost that significant person, but a friend, a best friend, a supporter, an advocate, a champion, a defender, someone who may have loved you unconditionally. Think of all the things that person represented for you. No wonder your heart is heavy with loss. This next line, I believe, is one of the most powerful in the poem. "And though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you." Loss is so personal. It's so different from person to person. We have different memories and different experiences and different songs and movies and stories and smells and tastes. Sometimes people may be trying to comfort you and say, "I know what you're going through." You may wonder, really? Do you really know what I'm going through? the silence of absence deepens. What is the poet talking about here? The silence which comes from the absence of your loved one. That hole in time and space in your heart and in your life where your loved one once was. We can choose to sit in that silence, or we can run from it. But how long can we run? And where are we going? Next, the poet writes about guilt. Flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid or undone. According to Dr. Therese Rando in her 1991 book, How to Go On Living When Someone You Love Dies, which is a wonderful book I would recommend, she writes about how anger and guilt are very common after a loss. Not everyone feels both of them or either of them. But these are two emotions which culture may say are bad or wrong. And I would argue that they are not. Perhaps you have guilt. Maybe you regret things you said or did not say or do. With mesothelioma, anger is very common. It's difficult enough to lose someone to cancer, but to lose someone to a cancer that may have been prevented or was caused by a lack of responsibility only makes the loss all the more difficult. It's okay to be angry. What matters is what we do with that anger. And I am so moved by your presence here today. How you all share a common spirit to make a difference. A common phrase I've heard this morning again and again is, we will not give up. And I applaud that. The next part of the poem, there are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks, and you are thrown back onto the black tide of loss. You are ambushed by grief. I think ambushed is a very appropriate word here. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Some days you feel pretty good, things are going well, and then something happens. Something reminds you of that person and you remember. You remember how different things are. You may wonder, how long will this last? How long will I be ambushed by this grief? The poet goes on to write, it becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you know, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced to its last.